Hello, everybody. It's time to talk about this new bill in Congress that came on Congresswoman Omar's heels. She keeps making anti-Semitic remarks, so they're going to pass this bill against anti-Semitism. Except the bill has morphed into you can't say anything Islamophobic or against any race that has been oppressed in this country. And the interesting thing is that nowhere in that bill is it you also can't say anything against Christians, no Christophobia or whiteyophobia. No, it's just certain groups. And there's that one group that sometimes I've used the word white trash, and hopefully I did not offend anyone. I used it because clearly that word can be said. You can say cracker, you can say honky, you can say white trash. You can, as long as it's a white person, and if they're a Christian, of course, if they're a Democrat, then that's a different story. You notice if they're a Democrat, you can't really say anything against them, but you can, as long as they don't belong. See, that's the little caveat there. That's the caveat. You just like Hillary. When Obama ran, Obama made Bill into a racist, which they are actually. It was actually the truth. And then Hillary, when she ran, it was Trump was the racist, and her and Bubba weren't racists anymore, and never did anything to women that was bad. So, see how things change. It all of a sudden the slate gets wiped clean, and people are literally told. You're literally told, this is who you vote for. This person is the racist. All right, now it's like a play. We're changing sides. Okay, now you are the one who's the racist, and you're the one who's not the racist, and you're the minority, and you're not the minority. It's like they just, every 4 to 8 years, they just switch around. They take the script and they just move it around. Remember, McCain was also a racist, and all of a sudden, because he hated Trump, he's no longer a racist. And Obama actually said that the guy was, because he was in a prisoner of war camp, he said something really awful about McCain. But it's Trump who said the worst thing about McCain. They make you forget Obama said that because he was in a prisoner of war camp, and now Obama and the Bushes, they're all friends, But Obama said that because he was in a prisoner of war camp, he's crazy. We don't know about his sanity. He's been in the Senate for how many years? He was literally putting that out there that he was crazy. So, getting on to a different subject here. That's not really a different subject. They tell you who to be angry at, who to hate, and then we hate. It's okay to say certain words about white people. It's okay. I use them as an example, kind of like wake you up. We can use these words. Yet, even though this bill will not allow us to ever say anything bad about certain groups, there are groups like people who are called white trash who are not trash. My father was considered white trash. He was as poor as an Appalachian. His mother moved back to Canada to a town of 2,500 people, still 2,500 people, most of them being Native American, Native Canadian. That's who most of the people in that town are. And the people of Appalachia, who are the poorest of the poor, You know, we were told that the people who are really suffering are the ones that are coming over this border. We're not thinking about the refugees anymore, who are Syrian refugees. Nobody's really talking about them anymore. It's only the people that are coming in over the border from Central America that want a new life, that Cortez says are the true Americans. They tell us who the oppressed group is, who the most oppressed person is. And then we change and we go in that direction. Yet the people who live in the Appalachians, who are poor like my father, are completely ignored. Nobody talks about them at all. And they have their babies. They're poor and they have their babies. They don't have good health care there. They don't have drinkable water. The water is like, will make you sick, so they drink Mountain Dew. And their teeth are rotted. From childhood, their teeth are rotted. And they die between 50 and 60. I mean, there's a very high death rate, high suicide rate as well. Poor health, high suicide rate. I mean, these people, if you ever seen the movie Coal Miner's Daughter, I mean, it's like that kind of poor. Yet Loretta Lynn said that in the movie, the house that she lived in was like a palace compared to the house that she lived in. She's part Native American. A lot of these people in Appalachia are part Native American. But they're still considered white. They're considered white, and they're considered not an oppressed group, not a group that's suffering. And they are, and they're dying. Yet, what about we can't say the word white trash or cracker or honky anymore. We can't put these people down anymore. How about that? No, we can do it. They're Christian. And a lot of them are Melungeon. Melungeon is a race that's people don't talk about anymore. But there was on a plantation when a master had sex with a slave, a female slave, the child would become a slave. If you are Melungeon, if a white woman had sex with a black man, the child was born free, was not a slave. The Melungeons are part Scottish, part slave, African slave, descendant of African slaves. And a lot of them are part Native American. They're a mixed group, yet somehow they're considered white. They have blue eyes because of the Scottish. And it said that Elvis was actually, the names on his surnames of his father's side and his mother's side were actually Melungeon names. So he is, I remember my mother watching Aloha from Hawaii. Of course, it was a rerun. But my mother, because she's Italian, Italians are, they like the nice, cool, ass. It has to be nice shape, has a nice shape. But every time I went out and tried clothes on, my mother or my aunt say, okay, walk. We have to see how it looks from behind. Oh, she's the cat's meow. Look at that. And they're watching me walk. She has a swing when she walks. Apparently I look good from behind. But that was very important. In the Italian culture, that's the ass is very important. And I remember Elvis, he turned around and his ass was nice and round, which is you don't find in white or Native American. You don't find that nice round ass. And it wasn't big. It was just when he was nice and slim. And I thought to myself from that point on, I'm going, I bet he is part descendant of slaves. I bet he is part African American, somewhere in there. I thought that because you don't find that in white men or even Native Americans. That's different. It was a nice, like when he was slim, that was nice. Very nice looking. And it took my mother to point that out and make me think about it. And as it turns out, his surnames are actually Melungian. So he is part. So he's got those blue eyes. And if you look at him as a child, as he's growing up, sometimes we resemble one parent when we're younger or as a baby, and as we grow up, we resemble another parent more. He actually looked like a white version of he could definitely look like he was mixed race if you really see his pictures of him when he's younger. Absolutely. But the material point is that here we've got a big deal was made out of Congresswoman Omar's remarks, anti-Semitic remarks, yet Amy Coney Barrett, Dianne Feinstein, how her religion lives strong within her, that they're afraid that she might, as a judge, vote against Roe v. Wade. That her religion, you're not supposed to, in America, you're not supposed to consider the person's religion. So to any position in government, you can be any religion and it shouldn't matter. With Camille Harris and Mazie Geraldo, they're ganging up on people who, appointed judges, because they belong to the Knights of Columbus. Every member of my family belongs to the Knights of Columbus. They are a very good group of men that go out and help mentally challenged people, Special Olympics. They're constantly doing drives and getting donations and helping people who are handicapped in some way, challenged in some way. Yet they said that, oh, you're an organization that's against gay rights because they're Catholic, and supposedly Catholics are against gay rights, which is actually not true. But the truth of the matter is that, speaking as someone who's raised as a Catholic, 99% of all Catholics vote Democrat. So what they're doing is strictly discriminating against anybody who belongs to the Knights of Columbus, as if they can't hold a position as a judge. Amy Coney Barrett can't hold a position as a judge. That the Democrat Party is throwing these, that's okay because they're Christian or they're Catholic. That's okay. Your religion lives loud inside you. Dianne Feinstein, who was born Jewish but went to a Catholic high school. The education was better in Catholic schools. She was sent there. You can say that, and you can be Jewish, but you can't say anything anti-Semitic, and you can say something against somebody who's Christian. You can discriminate against Christians and Catholics, even though Catholics, 99% of them vote Democrat because of John F. Kennedy. I'll tell you that right now. The whole abortion thing, they go in the voting booth, they vote Democrat. These Democrats don't have to worry about a damn thing. But it's not really the religion, it's because they're Republican, because they're conservative. It's still one party pitted against another. But the bill will be, of course, you got your Clarence Thomas, who was a Republican, and he was descendant on both sides of African slaves. Yet they tried to take him down. Can you imagine what they would have done to him today? How bad it would have been today. how they would have treated him and the names they would have called him. Yet they did that back with who George Herbert Walker Bush appointed him, right? So that would be in the late 80s that happened. No, wait, I think it was the early 90s. It's the early 90s that they did that to him. So it's really, you put the two together, Christian, or even atheist, I would think, if you're a conservative or you support Trump, that's who they're going against. But this bill is not going to include, you can't call any names of white people, no matter how much they have suffered. And nobody's trying to help the people in Appalachia. Nobody. It's okay to call them names. It's okay to say that they're privileged, and they're not privileged. It's okay. As long as they're Christian and white, or even if as long as they're not Democrat, and even if they are a minority. This is a scary thing. Is that going to be in the bill? That if you're a minority and you are a conservative, you cannot slander them either. Is that going to be in the bill? I know you're not going to say anything about the white people in Appalachia, who are actually a mixed group of people. But everybody looks at them as if they're 100% white and 100% privileged. And what about the soldiers who come home from the war that commit suicide, 22 a day? Is there anything in that bill that Antifa and all these hate groups aren't going to discriminate against them? Is there something in the bill about the soldiers that are killing themselves? Or any person who's had a hard life, or, you see, that's the thing. When you look into somebody's eyes, you don't know if they've had a hard life. You don't know what they've suffered. Just like Fräulein Fritzel from Germany, who, when her mother died when she was 18, her father threw her in the basement and raped her every single day. There was no toilet, so there's feces and urine on the floor, and the feces and urine turned moldy. And then she gave birth to about 9 of his children, her father's children. One of them died, and the corpse sat in that basement and rotted. And the children had to live with that, and they had to sleep on moldy feces. Can you imagine? He beat her and raped her every single day. And she's a white woman, a German white woman. And if you saw her on the street, now her father's in prison, thank God, but he went to prison in his 80s. He doesn't have very long to live. He should be in one of our prisons and he should have some special treatment in our prisons. Absolutely. But if you saw Fräulein Fritzel walking down the street, a white woman, you would probably, it's okay to call her a name. It's okay. It's not against the law. She's Christian, not against the law to call her a name. She's white. She's privileged. She's privileged. That was a privilege, the raping. And all her children, you'd look at her children and you will say, they're privileged. But you can call them names. According to this new bill, it's okay. It's okay. They're Christian and they're white. Or they're just white. They're privileged. It's okay. You can slander her children who lived in the basement with her with the rotting corpse of their sibling for over 30 years. Of all the cases I've ever heard of suffering, abuse, I have never heard of a case that was that bad. But there is nothing in that bill that will stop anyone, to make it against the law to slander her and her children. If you saw her on the street, you look into somebody's eyes, no matter what color skin they have, no matter what party they follow, you have no idea what they've suffered. May I not criticize my neighbor until I've walked a mile in their moccasins. It's a little Indian prayer that we got in the mail when I was a child. May I not criticize my neighbor till I've walked a mile in their shoes. I don't even think you'd have to walk a mile and fall on Fritzel's shoes or her children's. I don't think you could handle a second in her shoes. But there is nothing in that bill that would stop anyone from slandering her and her children. And that's the scary point. Of course, Camille Harris, who is half Indian, that's where she gets her skin tone from, is her mother is darker skinned. And in India, it ranges from white to dark. Even in the Brahmin class, even though that's the priestly and it's the top caste, people say, well, the Brahmins or Aryans, and they put down the people who are dark-skinned, and people who are dark-skinned aren't Brahmins. That isn't true. My brother-in-law, who's a Brahmin, looked at me and said, my father is as dark as me, and my mother is as white as my wife. And he laughs. He's got such a really cute laugh. But he's very dark-skinned, and his father's even darker, and they're Brahmins. So that's a fallacy. That's a fallacy that there's some kind of, just in India, it has to do with skin color. It doesn't. So Camille Harris's mother, her skin color has really nothing to do with, in Jamaica, the Indian population lives together and they marry into each other. But Camille Harris's, on her father's side, they were British and they owned African slaves. See, that's the reason why she wants reparations. And of course, the fake Indian, Pocahontas, wants reparations too. And so does Ocasio-Cortez. They all want reparations because they have to deflect from their own prejudice and their own racism. And the stain in Camille Harris's family, which is actually slave owning. She actually owned black. So this is to pay for it. Well, then she should pay. She should definitely pay. Absolutely. I've said this before in a previous video, every Democrat should pay because the party is the party of slavery. Everyone who ascribes to the Democrat Party, everyone who wants people flowing over that border, you pay the taxes that pays for these people. You do that. I've said this before. I'm saying it again. Pocahontas has to be for reparations because she stole the history and the suffering of a people that were not her own at all whatsoever. I don't even think there's 1/1024th in her. I don't think there's anything because that mix is South American. And of those people are mixed with Spanish. And the Spanish have the same DNA as people in Britain. So I don't think there's anything in her of color. Anything at all. I don't even think melanin rises to her skin if you stuck her in the sun at the equator at noon. But she has to deflect from the fact that she stole, and she actually probably took someone who actually was a minority. She took their job. Or of somebody who was oppressed in some way. She took their job. And Harvard hired her I'm sure knowing that she wasn't Native American. My guess is they hired her because they didn't want to hire someone who was Native American. They didn't want to. This is how they got away with not hiring someone from an oppressed group. They could hire a white woman with blue eyes and blonde hair. And then they put it in all their pamphlets, made them look really good. I think there's some more digging needs to be done on that. I think that's what they did. I think we've got some, on the outside. Oh, I'm not a racist on the outside, but on the inside, they're racist, It's all for show. This is all for show. Everything is for show. And Camille Harris, if she becomes president, that woman sounds like she PMSs all day long, every day of the month. The descendant, her family owned slaves, African slaves. If you make her president, what the hell are you making president? You're calling Trump the racist who has no connection with being a slave owner at all whatsoever? Neither his mother or his father were even in this country when that was going on. You're going to make her president? No, she's a hypocrite. And you need to take her down now. Liz Warren, Pocahontas, she's a hypocrite. You need to take her down now. Ocasio-Cortez, whatever the hell she is, actress, idiot, she's an imbecile. There's nobody normal on the Democrat side. But this bill is going to criminalize speech. You can't say anything about these certain groups, but there's nothing in there that says that you can't slander an Appalachian who suffers to this day that nobody talks about, a soldier. Or if you met someone and you looked them in the eye, like Fraulein Fritzel and her children, you can't tell when you look someone in the eye what they've suffered. You do not know. They could suffer more than someone in an oppressed group. They could have, and you don't know it, or just as much. So, it's a very scary bill. And we should just come to the point where we can look at each other and not judge and not say you're privileged because you have this or that skin color, or your religion is this or that, or you're an atheist and you're white. We have to come to that point and say that we can commiserate with each other because we're human and all of us have suffered in some way. And by God, if you're a Slav, that's where the word slave came from. Those people have ancestors that were enslaved by everyone in the world, enslaved the Slavs. And then there's the Armenians that nobody thinks about, the Armenian Genocide. And it happened in the last century. The Turks went in, and because they didn't want to convert to Islam, thousands, hundreds of thousands were crucified. There's photographs of them being crucified like Jesus Christ. 1,500,000 were killed. But they're whites and they're Christian. So there's nothing in that bill. Nothing in that bill to protect them. And they certainly are an oppressed people, but they didn't convert to Islam. So maybe, I guess that was their fault, was not converting to Islam. We don't think about that genocide, but there's other genocides that we do think about that are on the forefront because they tell us what to be angry at. They tell us which people need money and help. They tell us who has suffered, and they ignore swaths of people, all sorts of people who have suffered, groups of people that could be considered oppressed, because we are drones. We're programmed and told what to do and what to say and what not to say. You can't speak about this group, but you could say whatever you, that Armenian, that's right, their father was crucified. It's like, but you can say anything about them because they're white and they're Christian. Isn't there something wrong here? And now we are enshrining it. The capital. We're enshrining it in the capital. In the capital where the rotunda is, where we enshrine all our great leaders with all the statues people that we've put in the highest honor. And one of them, of course, maybe several of them, but we know one who died in 2011, Robert C. Byrd, the grand exalted cyclops of the KKK, which Barack Obama, our first African-American president, put his statue up in the Capitol Rotunda. So if you have this kind of hypocrisy, and then you have a bill coming out saying you can't say anything about these people, it's against the law. But there is a certain group of people that's something that's interesting. That's what the KKK did. Oh yeah, the KKK, that's right, the Democrats, party of the KKK. They singled out a group of people and made it into law to discriminate against. And that's where Hitler got the idea to go against the Jews and the gypsies and the homosexuals and Catholics and Christians and Jehovah's Witnesses, anybody who didn't put the Nazi party first. The KKK. That's right, that's what they did. And they also called Southern Italians and Greeks half black. Not Mexicans. Mexicans were designated as white. And they were lynched too, the Italians and the Greeks. So that makes sense why the Democrats would be putting forward a bill that says you can't discriminate against these people, but you can discriminate against these people. That's very Democrat, isn't it? That's what it really comes down to. It really comes down to the Democrats who are moving into socialism, who are moving into one-party rule. And it seems like we've got the KKK that's really taken over this country. And it's not the president. It's not the president. I don't know how we can vote them out of office, but we better. We better save this country. And we better keep passing on information. These videos, anything you can find on the web, we better get the truth out, because we're so close to losing our country. We're so close to it. And we are very close to civil war. We're having it right now. Think that it might come? It has come. It has come. We have to do it, and we have to be intelligent, and we have to be peaceful about it. Good night, everyone.